talking to somebody earlier today, and I pointed out that I really do not spend a lot of my time when I get to decide what it is I want to do with my time around other folks. The person that I spend most of my time around is my son, and he is moderately autistic, so in the middle of that autism spectrum, and he's the one who I spend most of my time around. And other than that, most of the time that I spend around people is with them serving me or doing something for me, or me just sort of not interacting a great deal, just sort of mingling with others. There are times when I'm better about that than others, but here's the thing about that. I've got this subject that I really wanted to talk about, probably again. I'll tell you that I've probably talked about it before, and I'll mention this probably in my notes as well. The subject is courtesy, and I'm going to talk about that today on the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I'm your host, I'm Kurt, and today is Tuesday, the 12th of April of 2022. Welcome to everyone who's here on Rumble, on the podcast, on BitChute, on CloudHub, on my Facebook page. That would be the Kurt's Religion and Politics page on Facebook, on kurtzreligionandpolitics.locals.com, on Minds, minds.com, on the Kurt's Religion and Politics group primarily there, on Parler, Gab, Twitter, or wherever else you happen to be catching me today. And again, the subject we're going to talk about is courtesy, and I'm going to run through my notes very quickly. But I wanted to say the thing that I was trying to get at earlier on when I talked about the idea that I don't hang around people is that means this subject that I'm talking today is something that I have to work particularly hard on, because if I don't, my natural instinct is to be somewhat biting and sarcastic and maybe even what people would term mean-spirited. So I have to work very, very hard to be a person who uses courtesy. Okay, going through my notes. I may well have talked on this subject on the podcast before, but you can be sure this is something so important it bears repeating periodically. So this may not be the last time you hear me discuss it. How do you feel when people cut in line in front of you at the grocery store or some other business? When that happens, how much more does it bother you, and this will be true if you're like me, when the folks working at that store do absolutely nothing about it when they do it? Be honest. How many minutes do you suppose you save when you drive around somebody in traffic only to stop with them at the very next traffic light? Is it really worth the potential bad will you generate as a result in either case? You may be looking at yourself and seeing a big, strong person. You might be asking yourself, who's going to stop me from cutting line? You may even be correct. That's possible. Allow me to point out a couple of realities, though. To begin with, today's strong man or woman is tomorrow's old man or woman. If you don't live long enough for that to happen, that's not really a good thing, is it? I certainly wouldn't say so. I want to put another idea out there for consideration, though. Older, weaker people are often hiring managers, business owners, supervisors, managers of one kind or another. If you think they're likely to hire rude people for a position in customer service or frankly whatever, with an eye towards keeping them there, you're pretty badly confused most of the time. Some might work with you and try and get you into a good place if they think you'll be beneficial to their company, but most won't. Some people might use an expression like karma's a bear. They might not be so polite, of course. You may think being polite and courteous makes no difference. That's for old, weak people. If you do, you may come to a rude awakening one day. I know you don't like waiting in line. Who does, after all? I know you don't understand why people would follow the speed limit. All that said, though, even if you can find no other reason to change your ways, I hope what I've said to this point gives you cause to do so. Believe it or not, there are other reasons, and they're as good as or better than the ones I've given to this point. If you can't imagine them, though, at least have the common sense to be sufficiently selfish to not land yourself in hard times for more or less no cause. Because really it mostly gets you very little for you to do the things that rude people do. You may potentially be surprised in your future in either case, whether you do or don't change. You may find it surprising what happens. For those who already act reasonably, I have just one thing to say. Thank you. Your consideration of others is a wonderful thing. Rest assured, others do see you even if you don't care. And if you're like me, the only reason you don't really care about that. The only reason you care is it shows who you are, right, as a person. That's the only reason you care. But look, you may think, by the way, quick caveat, if you hear my son in the background, you may today, he's home. I have to do my videos these days for at least part of the week after I pick him up from school, and there's just not much I can do about that, so I do it. That's how we do things at this moment in time. So keep that in mind. You may think that, again, that being courteous is for other people. You may think that you're going to get ahead by shoving in between other people. You may think that jamming yourself between two cars, you're going to get ahead. Okay? Again, the very simplest reason that's not true is if people come to identify you as a person who they do not want around them. Maybe a lot of times you don't care. But when you're out looking for work, and look, that can happen anytime. Oh, I'm working, I've got a good job, I like my job, I decide to be a rude individual, oops, my job is gone, now I'm looking for work. And everybody around me who sees me goes, yeah, not so much. I've seen this person around and I don't like them, whatever. And the end of that is not going to be a good thing for you. But even if that's not true, when you do things like jam yourself between two cars on a roadway, whether you think so or not, what's going to happen sooner or later is the person behind you is not going to see what you did, and they're not going to be able to stop on time, particularly if the person in front of you has some reason to jam on the anchors. If you think politeness exists for no reason, then I have news for you. You're more than a little confused. We used to say in the military, we used to use this expression, rank has its privileges, and it meant that people who'd been around for a while had the opportunity to not do things that they'd had to do a lot when they were younger. Clean toilets, mop floors, whatever. We didn't do that as older folks in the military for the most part. Not because we hadn't, not because we couldn't, but because other people were coming up that we wanted to learn the lessons. And by the way, quite frankly, just to deal with those things. And here's the thing, as you get older, you will understand why that is. If there's no other reason for you to be courteous, to be polite, to be kind, and to recognize that you have a place in life, those reasons probably are pretty well good enough. But I'm going to say this again. Let's say you go out there and you act like an idiot. And you do that in some store somewhere. And you decide you want to work in that store. And it turns out that the guy that you cut off in the lane to get into the only checkout that's opened, that they want you to fill another one of, or might want you to fill another one of, is the hiring manager for the store. What do you think they're going to do unless they're hard up for people when they're looking at you? And let me just tell you something. Today's hard up hiring manager tomorrow can find plenty of people to fill your role if they find that you can't act like a decent human being. Let me just clue you in on that now. I understand that you might think that courtesy, that politeness, that being a polite individual doesn't make sense. Let me just help you right now to understand. When you get older, when you're the old guy, when you're the weak individual for whatever reason, and other people decide that they're going to be jerks to you, it might not be a very particularly pretty thing that happens. I want you to consider that. I want you to keep it in mind. Do not think that just because it seems to you like there's no good reason for you to be a kind, polite, reasonable human being, that there in fact is no reason for that. That's just not the case. Okay? I know it's hard to picture when you're younger. I know it's hard to even be mindful of other people when you're younger lots of times. I get that. But you need to take that on as a practice in your life, and you need to learn how to be kind and courteous and good to others. And if you don't, if nothing else, as you get older, count on people being rude, ruthless, and mean to you. Okay, I need to go ahead and wrap things up. This has been the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. I'm your host, I'm Kurt, and today is Tuesday, the 12th of April of 2022. As I said yesterday, Wednesday is hard coming up. Wednesday, the 13th of April of 2022. That would be what a lot of people consider the middle of the work week, based on the fact that most of them do Monday through Friday. Welcome and thank you for everyone who's been here on Rumble, the podcast, YouTube, BitChute, CloudHub, my Facebook page. That would be the Kurt's Religion and Politics page on Facebook, on kurtzreligionandpolitics.locals.com, on Minds, MINDS.com, on the Kurt's Religion and Politics group, primarily there, on Parler, on Gab, on Twitter, or anywhere else you might be picking me up today. The subject for today has been courtesy, and tomorrow we're going to talk about a subject that I think I need to cover because I heard somebody say something recently. It was Dinesh D'Souza, who I've gotten a lot of material out of recently, about the idea that the Trinity isn't explicitly mentioned in Scripture. And he's right, that's true, but I want to talk about why there's a greatly more compelling case for the Trinity than there ever has been for this concept of purgatory. So I'm going to go ahead and discuss the Trinity tomorrow. Hope you're having a good day today. Hope everything is going well for you, and hopefully we will see you again on Wednesday's edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. The speaker on this edition of the Daily Summation is Kurt Schubert. This podcast was created on Tuesday, the 12th of April of 2022. The Daily Summation is created for Kurt's Religion and Politics. Thanks for watching today's edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. Don't forget to come back tomorrow to check out the next one. Remember, on various platforms, primarily Rumble, YouTube, BitChute, and CloudHub, and the audio podcast, you can subscribe to my content. For the audio podcast, you probably want to use Apple, Google, or Spotify. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify. In order to find me on those platforms, you can go to the Kurt's Religion and Politics channels on Rumble, YouTube, BitChute, and CloudHub. You can also get to my content on Facebook by finding the Kurt's Religion and Politics page there. Minds, MINDS.com, where you will find me at the Kurt's Religion and Politics group. And Kurt's Religion and Politics.locals.com as well. You can look there. I post my daily video on various social media sites, really only about 3, Parler, Gab, and Twitter at present. I am at KP Schubert on each of them, and you can find me under them, and you can find the videos under me. You should be able to find my podcasts on Google and Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It's also on podcasts.kpschubert.com. That's podcasts with an S. .kpschubert.com. If you're looking for me on various of the podcast sites, you probably want to search Kurt's Religion and Politics, not the Daily Summation. Keep in mind you can subscribe to my content on various places that I put it. All constructive feedback is welcome. You can like, dislike, add a rumble, or give whatever feedback is available on any of the platforms that you can do such things. You can also add a comment on what I put there. Unless you're advertising or doing something that I believe will harm others, I'll leave your comments out there even if I don't agree with or understand them. I will try to let you know I've seen them when possible and may reply if I feel it's reasonable, appropriate, and possible, of course. Thanks again for viewing this edition of the Daily Summation from Kurt's Religion and Politics. Don't forget to come back again for tomorrow's as well.